This is how it happened.
This case was directly incited by the motive Tozu introduced, in which everyone here received another person's blackmail. Amidst the chaos that spawned, the killer saw an opportunity to commit a murder. They sent letters to two people, Wolfgang Akide, who they planned to kill, and Diana Venezia, who they planned to frame. Wolfgang and Diana were asked to meet in the boiler room in 2 days' time. Wolfgang's letter told him to arrive at 8:15 a.m., while Diana's told her to arrive at 8:45 a.m.
The messages threatened to expose our blackmail, so we had no choice but to follow their instructions.
At this point, the killer probably knew the way they were going to kill Wolfgang. Hence, how they reacted to this next piece of information. The following morning, it was revealed that Cassidy and Jet were going to hold a game tournament.
The point was for people to spend time together and not think murdery thoughts. But little did we know, a would-be killer was lurking nearby. And how? The killer emboldened their own plans and made it so the tournament would happen at 9 a.m.
Did you disagree with yourself?
Both Wolfgang and Diana turned down the offer, which must have been music to the killer's ears, since it confirmed their plan was working. The killer took this as a sign to commence the next phase of their plan. Later that evening, they went downstairs to the boiler room and began preparing the murder weapon.
Though, it might be more accurate to call it a murder mechanism. The killer wrapped an extension cord as tightly as they could around a car battery, which had been stolen from Jet's room. I imagine the battery must have been sitting on top of the generator. Wouldn't want to risk an explosion while bringing lithium too close to the water.
The killer avoided opening the boiler room vent for this segment, probably because they knew I'd remember it being closed originally.
A crucial part of the killer's plan would involve sliding the cord through the boiler room vent and out the other end into the dining hall. So they could then walk upstairs to the dining hall and tie the protruding part of the cord to the dining hall vent.
Funnily enough, the killer was going to be needed in the dining hall very shortly.
Yeah, to help Cass and me rearrange the dining hall's furniture. We were saving the whole thing for next morning, but they convinced us to do it that night instead.
Their intentions were threefold. Create an alibi, hide the vent with a piece of furniture, and then open the vent in secret. After which, they'd return to the boiler room and suspend the battery over the generator.
Which brings us to today. Knowing better than to head downstairs without protection, Wolfgang went to the kitchen and armed himself with a knife. Toshiko didn't notice a knife on him when the two met in the hallway, so he must have hidden it in his blazer.
Wolfgang arrived inside the boiler room at 8:15 a.m., exactly like his letter requested. As he was waiting, the killer snuck up behind him.
And he got smacked right in the head with that steel rolling pin and crumpled like paper.
A syringe was then used to inject Wolfgang with a sleeping drug, ensuring he would remain in the boiler room until Diana arrived.
The killer might have, left the taser on the floor around this time.
Yeah, the taser they swiped from my dorm. They must have decided to raid the place after receiving my blackmail. If I'd heard about the taser sooner, I could have gotten rid of it. as well as whatever else my blackmail supposedly mentions.
Save the angsting for later, will you?
Anyway, back on topic. Wolfgang was left to lie in the partially flooded area of the boiler room, while the killer ran upstairs to help set up Mark's music equipment.
They didn't care about the equipment. They just wanted to put a speaker next to the vent, because it would drown out the fight which was gonna happen later.
Don't forget the digital clock! They wanted to get there before that became available. Don't need people knowing what time you actually arrived. My letter said to meet at 8:45 a.m. So that's when I got to the boiler room. I made sure to close the door behind me, just as the message told me to.
Bad idea. Killer flipped the doorknob so that the lock was on the outside instead of the inside. You locked yourself in!
The room was really dark too. I didn't even see the suspended battery, only the blinking security camera. And then, Wolfgang, he got up on his feet all of a sudden, and he started crying and saying these weird things. I tried to keep him calm and asked him to come over to me, which he actually did. But the very next second, he attacked me with his knife.
The drugs probably gave him a frightening hallucination, and he perceived you as a threat.
He was screaming at me, and I was screaming back. No one from the tournament could hear us over the music. At one point, I even picked up the taser, but then I threw it back down again.
And that's when the killer decided it was time. Having set their chair to recline, they were able to casually reach down and close the vent behind them. This lowered the extension cord, causing the car battery to enter the water and discharge a huge amount of electricity. Wolfgang, who was still standing in the water, was electrocuted instantly. The battery itself exploded upon reacting with the water, which the killer was likely banking on as a way to destroy evidence. All of this happened right under my nose. No one could have guessed that someone present at the tournament was committing murder.
The explosion also damaged the generator and caused the blackout. Everyone ended up stumbling around in the dark.
Not for long, though. We quickly came back to our senses and agreed to look for a backup generator on the underground floor.
I used a hairpin to unlock the boiler room door and ran outside, but you guys had already made it downstairs.
That's when you say you ducked around a corner and out of sight. Only after everyone went inside the closets did you then dash upstairs.
It's a good thing she did. Otherwise, we'd have found her alone in her room with Wolfgang's dead body. We would have wrongly assumed Diana was the killer, and died as a result. This complicated scheme calls to mind only one person. One person who just so happened to be sitting in a certain sofa chair. That person is you, Ava Sunaka. It's over.